and gentlemen, it's time for Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to an episode of Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined tonight by Chris Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
We are the Bell Lost Souls podcast. We're going to talk about some Kill Team in the first part of the show, and then in the second part of the show, we will talk about some great things about the ATC. I know we had a bonus episode come out where we allowed the organizers to kind of say their piece and give a timeline and organize things for everyone to hear because people were interested and potentially concerned. But 98% of the people had a great time, and we're going to talk about my team's progress through the event as well.
Yeah, sounds like a good time.
It was a fun time. Definitely going to be back next year. But
oh, yeah.
With what we have coming out right now up for pre-order this weekend is the new Kill Team game.
Now, Paul, did you play much of Kill Team in previous editions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I played it in each of its incarnations and things like Combat Patrol, Kill Team. I'm a big fan of the skirmish games.
Yeah, I know. I did it a couple different times. I remember buying the old Kill Team rules and building specialists. I had an entire inquisitorial team I custom built just for Kill Team. I've been very curious to see what this does differently than both 40k and previous Kill Team incarnations. So,
for one, the book is set up in a very familiar way. It's set up very similar. The rules are laid out, organized, very similar to how the 40k rules are laid out. I mean, visually.
Of course, same style.
Yeah. The rules are different, especially when we get into the the combat and the shooting phase. And the turn is organized a little bit different. For instance, this is just a for instance, there's an initiative phase where players roll 2 dice and whoever gets the highest has the essentially the priority, and you do your charge in the movement phase.
Oh, that is quite different.
Yeah, so that's done towards the very beginning before any of the the psychic or the shooting stuff goes down. You actually incorporate your charge move in the movement phase.
Yeah, it's kind of like this interesting evolution from where advancing and moving happen at the same time in 40k. Imagine if you had to start your turn within charge range. That would be difficult. But then again, the activation sequence is a lot different. It's not he moves all of his models or she moves all of her models and then you move all of yours. There's an alternating activation mechanic in here.
In the combat steps, yeah. There are. In the movement phase, each player will take in turn to move all of the models in their kill team that they wish to move, following the order determined in the initiative phase.
Okay.
Which you do before. The initiative is, in the initiative phase, the players roll 2d6. The player's result determine who has the first turn in each phase in this battle round, with the highest score taking the first turn, the next highest. You can play this game, by the way, with multiple people. Like, I think you can play 4+ players in this, and the rules are designed to accommodate that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, having a 4-way battle has always been one of those things that you love to. I don't know if you've ever done it in a 40k game before, Paul.
I have, but not in this edition. In previous editions, right. I have.
I know that those are the longest games ever. And whoever goes fourth in a free for all. They have the shortest turn.
Yeah. So back to the movement phase real quick. Is once a player has moved all the models they want to, the next player does the same, and so on until all players have moved all the models they wish to move. And then, when it's your turn, pick a model from your kill team and move it. You may then pick another model from your kill team to move until you have moved as many of the models in your kill team as you wish.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And that alternating activation thing, though, it's still... I mean, you're still moving all your stuff at the same time. Both players do their movement phase before you move on to the next phase.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And then it's important to this whole charging and overwatch and retreat. You have a couple of reactions here. It's not just overwatch or stand there and take it. You can actually retreat from a charge.
It's just, this is a really bad idea.
Well,
let's get out of here.
You get to move a certain amount of inches. I mean, obviously, I think if the charge still makes it, you're still charged, but you at least get a little bit more of a reaction in that movement phase.
All the chaos players should be very used to this after this Age of Terror.
Right. You also get to advance, but you also get something called a ready. When you pick a model to move, instead of making a normal move, including pivoting the model, all this stuff is very important. You can ready them unless they're within 1 inch of an enemy model. So if you're already in close combat, you can't ready. A model that is readied in the movement phase has an advantage in the subsequent shooting phase.
And it's just kind of like setting up to aim sort of thing, right?
Yeah. You'll put a pin in that, but essentially, well, I'll go ahead and tell you, the ready models get to act first.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some other advantages too, but that's essentially what that bonus is. And the how to play video on Kill Team is up on the official Games Workshop site. Go to the Warhammer 40,000.com, click on Kill Team. You'll see the tutorials on how to play. It's a really great walkthrough. It's going to be a better walkthrough because you can see some of the stuff than we're probably going to give here. So I definitely suggest checking it out. But I want to talk about some of the nuances here on this show. Yeah,
definitely. You'd be missing out on the suave British accent on this show. However, we will get into the nitty-gritty good stuff.
Yeah. So with the charge sequence, again, the all takes place in the movement phase as a subset of the movement phase. You then get to react, and that's the overwatch or retreat. A target cannot retreat if it already has made a move of any kind. That's very important. So if you've already moved, you cannot retreat, or if it's attempted.
So pretty much any movement. Yeah, any movement-related action, you just get one.
Yeah.
That's it.
A model can retreat if it has already fired Overwatch this phase. When a model retreats, it can be moved up to 3 inches by the controlling player. This move must end with the model further away from the charging model and more than 1 inch from any enemy model. A model that retreats cannot react later in the battle round, and cannot shoot later in the battle round, unless it can fly.
Oh, well, there we go. There's the caveat I was looking for. Still, I like that idea of being able to box somebody in. It's like, yeah, you can run away, but where are you going to go if your other movement has created sort of a zone of no escape?
Yep. And this game has tokens also. So the game suggests, it says, if you have Kill Team tokens, place them, next to the model, signifying that they've done XYZ thing.
I know that's your favorite thing in the world, Paul.
Well, okay. I don't like to feel oppressed by the tokens. Like in some of like the Fantasy Flight games, I feel like it's cumbersome and is a game into itself, just organizing these things. But these are just essentially notifications because you're doing the kind of you go, I go type. And I know we've used that phrase a lot because we're using you activate and we alternate activations.
It's a big step for 40k players. Like I don't think we can overstate that at this point. It's just like, yeah, this isn't your typical 40k game methodology.
Yeah, these tokens I think are going to be important. Now what? You can use pennies or quarters or whatever, some way to signify this guy charged, this guy's already moved, he's done this, he's done that.
This guy had a cheese sandwich for lunch.
No, that'd be a Fantasy Flight game.
Oh, my mistake.
Again, it's just not the way I prefer to play, but just reading over the rules here, I don't feel like it's going to be cumbersome. I feel like it's going to be an actual real benefit to have this notification on the table. Now the games you're playing on a much smaller play area. The core rules actually come with a play surface, and awesome terrain. Like check it out if you haven't already. This is a brand new skirmish game. I think I've seen them refer to it as kind of like the spiritual successor to Shadow War, and we'll explain why in just a few minutes, I think. But it's very much its own game, whereas Shadow War was kind of like 7th edition stapled onto old school Necromunda.
Yeah, it was kind of an unexpected success too. I remember Shadow War sold out so fast that they had to go back and say, there's more people who want to play this, but there's not any more boxes, so we need to print some more rules for this, I guess. And that's probably, part of when they realized that they had a good market for this sort of thing. And Shadow War may have just been a vehicle, for their Sector Mechanicus terrain have a place. Yeah, when honestly that should have a place because it's very cool, just like you said.
I scooped up as much of that terrain as I could, and I think people are going to do the same thing. Game.
I would be very interested to see or to hear if their attitude towards how seriously they were going to take Kill Team as a skirmish game in 40k became after they saw sort of the need for it. But that's kind of philosophy at this point. We can save that for.
I will say this is a brand new game. I mean, it uses principles that we are comfortable with moving models around for 40K, and I think that's a success. That is something that's going to make the mental barrier to entry to this incredibly low. But it also, I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's an excuse to build a small faction that you are just interested in, but no, you don't want to build 57,000 models from that faction. You just want to own a few of them. And now here's a really good opportunity to actually do some gaming with them and have it only take up a small area of your hobby.
Yeah, and it's probably a good, dare I say, dry fit for whether you want to expand a collection like that. If you're not enjoying how an army feels or plays in Kill Team, yeah, it's not going to translate to the same experience in 40K exactly. But if you're into it, you'll want to do more with it. So
how I told you this is kind of like the spiritual successor to Shadow War. What I mean by that is that for the kill teams, you're buying them as if you were buying a model in a 40K squad. You got to pay for them one at a time. You have to equip them. And my initial read is that the points are the same. Like they're the points that they are in 40K.
That's interesting.
So like an aberrant is 15 points for the Gene Stealer cults.
Now, I mean, speaking of Gene Stealer cults or any army in general, right, that has access to cheap, effective infantry, like, a lot of what people hate about elite armies in 40K is that you can't put a bunch of models on. They don't do the work that a bunch of little models can do. I heard that in Kill Team this iteration, there's actually a cap on how many models you can have in your Kill Team.
There's the cap is 20 models. You cannot have more than 20 models in your Kill Team.
So it's like 3 to 20.
Yes.
Right, so I wonder what kind of kill team could be composed of only 3 models.
Well,
because there's no custodians, so
there aren't. But see, we get into I'm actually not sure right now. And there's also the damage profile from the weapons and things like the psychic phase are the same as they are in 40K. Oh, not psychic phase, not the same. The damage profiles and the weapons are the same as they are. Smite has been replaced by the Cybolt power. Cybolt has a warp charge value of 5. If manifested, the closest enemy model within 18 inches and visible to the psyker suffers 1 mortal wound. If the result of the psychic test 11+, the target suffers D3 mortal wounds. So there are psykers in this game. So Grey Knights exist.
Did we finally find the game that Grey Knights are the best at? Stay tuned to find out.
Yeah, I don't know if they're the best for sure, but I think it's. Let me talk about how you build a kill team. Is that the selections in this book? It's all there. You're not going to get there's no librarians, there's no chaplains, there's no autarchs. Like how you build your kill team is from the core squads of the armies themselves. So for instance, the Necrons, you build your kill team from warriors, immortals, flayed ones, and death marks.
Right. No, and basically you're not looking anything higher than sergeant level.
Exactly right. Yeah, and so in the orcs, I know people are going to be jamming all over the orcs. You've got boys, Gretchens, commandos, Burna boys, and Ludas.
I gotta say, I think that orc kill teams might be some of the best because not just in terms of rules. I don't know anything about what the rules are, but the personality you can throw in. Everybody's kind of seen the 6 commando orcs that when you put them together the right way, it looks like they're a rhino. Or
get your flash gets bits now before they're all gone.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is going to create some golden hobby kill team scenarios.
There's a lot of lore and flavor built into each of these. The book comes with all those factions that you've seen detailed on the Warhammer community site. They all have a couple of. They're all in the core book. So if you get the core book, you can play any faction that is currently available in Kill Team, which is all of them except the Custodes and Imperial Knights. I mean, that's pretty much it. But there's a bit of flavor in each of these sections. For instance, there's a name generator in each of these sections.
Oh, hilarity ensues.
Well,
do tell.
I mean, I don't know about hilarity, but they are, for instance, for the Kabbalite name generation table. It's a D66 chart, and you've got something like Orvac the Blood Breather. Those are, you get a taken name and a Kabbalite name, and for the Witch Cult, you get an arena title and a click name.
That sounds funny. If I would love for names to be a thing, because imagine the on-table banter. It's like, so tell me exactly, how do you breathe blood?
Well, each one of your kill team members, you fill out you fill out a roster, and then you fill out a card for them that lets you keep track of what their stats are and their weapons, because you got to buy all this stuff individually. And it also helps you keep track of what their skills are. Like each one of these figures, like a Kabbalite warrior, it has a specialist row on there. So that tells you what type of you can pick a specialization for them, and then that sets them on a tree of advancement, like you're playing in a campaign style kill team, where you're able to if you're playing different campaigns, you could you pick a different tree for each time you do it, or experiment or whatever. But you have to do that you have to put them on a path when you create the person.
That's very interesting. And it's that little customization that's going to make this, I think, a little bit more memorable than Sergeant Dude Bro the First, who dies every round.
He still might. But let's talk about the psychic phase, since we were talking about psychic phase, we jumped over. Like Rubric Marines, you can have an aspiring sorcerer as one of your choices. And they've got the icon of flame at the start of your turn. In the psychic phase, roll a d6 for each model from your kill team equipped with an icon of flame. On a 6, inflict 1 mortal wound on the closest enemy model within 12 inches of the model being rolled for. The aspiring sorcerer knows the psychic power Cybolt. He can both cast and deny the witch.
Okay.
We talk about this is the same profiles. There aren't a lot of things in this book right now that have multiple wounds. So this is going to be a pretty deadly game.
Well, and that's, that kind of raises another question for me. It's just one of the differences in Shadow War Armageddon to some of the previous kill team rules was you could get shot in the leg and you could, get crippled or something could happen. Whereas in normal kill team or in 40k, you lose your wound, you're just gone. Like, how is that in the new kill team? How is that reflected?
In the kill team, you're back to being wounded, being taken out of action. You're not necessarily killed, but there's an injury roll each time you lose your last wound.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, so basically, when a model's wounds are reduced to 0, the controlling player, unless stated otherwise, inflict damage on page 31, that's what it says. It makes an injury roll for that model. To make an injury roll, the player rolls a d6 and applies the following modifiers depending on how the damage was caused. Injured. Injured models is obscured. Okay, here we go. Psychic power, shooting attack, injury roll modifiers. Injured model is obscured from the Psyker shooting or shooting model, and within 1 inch of a model or piece of terrain that is between the two models, there's a -1 to the injury roll. Each flesh wound on the model is a +1 to the injury roll. Each flesh wound on an for close combat attack injury roll modifier, each flesh wound on the model is +1. So then you look up the result on the following table. Roll a d6. On a 3 or less, it's a flesh wound. On a 4+, you're out of action.
Okay.
So you're not exactly, as soon as you lose your last model, your last wound, you might still be in the fight.
Okay. That's interesting. And the morale, that kind of leads to the whole difference between morale. I think morale, based on the GW video that came out, is the biggest deviancy that we'll see between normal 8th edition morale rules and what this kill team is, because you have to worry about your force breaking, right?
Yeah, your whole thing being, that's actually one of the victory conditions and some of the match play missions is, hey, if you're still on the table, you might be the winner. So you're not shaky. If you're still, on the table and at full fighting capacity.
Better hope you got good armor, bro, and lucky dice.
Yeah, and some steely resolve.
Yeah, because if we are rolling 2d6 to determine, like, if you break or if you're not broken against the leadership values of some of these units that I'm thinking of in 40k, going to be a lot of broken hearts, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, some of these leaderships are, like, for a Scion is 6.
It's not great.
So I know it might have been confusing when I was talking about flesh wounds and when you're out of action. A model that suffers a flesh wound is restored to 1 wound remaining. Yeah, a model with one or more flesh wounds suffers penalties to hit. So, I mean, as you are limping along, you are going to be at a reduced capacity.
And that just makes sense. Hey, and I bet there's tokens for that too, right, Paul?
There might be.
Glorious tokens for you to use.
In the morale phase, each player takes nerve test for each of the models that has one or more flesh wounds. So even though they may be soldiering on and this kill team is seasoned elite, the injuries may get to them and they may lose the nerve.
Well, here's hoping.
Then we go into the fight phase. Hammer of Wrath is back. Models that charge in this battle realm fight before all other models.
There you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's also very important. And I think we kind of went past the shooting phase, which we did. We kind of jumped around a bit. Like I mentioned, readied models shoot before all other models.
And is that regardless of who won priority?
No, you would then, if say both people had ready models, then you would go alternating like the priority. But yes, it would be otherwise before the initiative.
Now here's another question. Does any of this happen on a non-D6?
That is a good question. And so far, this is all on a D6.
Interesting. Because I know, especially when you and I were at the Adepticon preview for this, months ago, Paul, like there were 10-sided dice there.
Yep. And this is where we will all be learning together is what the 10-sided dice are for.
The plot thickens.
There you go. And this is, of course, the briefest intro of this, the kill team, but I really do like how they got this set up with basically how you make a kill team. And I mentioned that name generator. So for the factions like Marines and for Astra Militarum that have multiple established factions, there's a Cadian name generator, a Catachan name generator. It's pretty cool.
Sounds like someone had a bit of fun with this.
Yeah. There's all these lore things that you can build into. They come as easy for you to build in. You could, we often if we're just powering through generate an army list, we don't think about that or we skip it. Seems like a very natural part of the game. So I'm digging it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I really look forward to kind of digging into the nitty gritty tactica of this because there's this. I get a lot of enjoyment out of problem solving and, as long as it's not math problems, which may not make sense to you, but I enjoy tactical situations and anything that kind of expands on that creative urge to like, well, what happens if I do this? Like, what are the tools I've got to deal with these problems, right? That sort of stuff is exciting for me. And that's kind of, if I had to pick the one thing about Kill Team that interested me the most, it would be that. Like, what different ways can I solve these problems? With what different models? With what kind of rules? With what specialties?
Yep. I've found a use for the D10s, and that is the consequences of battle. There's a casualty roll. As the dust settles after a battle, each side retreats to count the cost. Territory may be won or lost, so on and so forth. Each player should roll a d6 for each model from their kill team on the battlefield that has one or more flesh wounds. On a roll of 1 to 3, the model recovers. On a 4 to 6, the model goes out of action. Each player then makes a casualty roll for each of their models that is out of action at the end of the mission by rolling a d10 and consulting the following table.
Well, it must be important if they decided we needed more sides on those dice.
A 9 or 10 is hard knocks. The model makes a full recovery as described above, and if it is a specialist, it gains an additional experience point.
And that's like the Sly Marvo school of doing business.
Just keep getting knocked down and back up again.
Yep.
Indeed. So, I mentioned that the profiles on all the weapons are the same. So there's no learning curve. If you already have some models in your army and you're comfortable with what they do and you want to use that, you could take 7 of them and make a kill team.
Yeah. I already have a bunch of models I could use for a kill team just built and ready. Not any of my Inquisition models, unfortunately, but, I've got a ton of different things I can choose from.
Yeah, this is a weighty book. This book has 208 pages. The last couple of pages are referenced for you. They explicitly state that, hey, photocopy these and use these. There's also cards and stuff that you can get to write your things on. It's a pretty complete game, if you ask me, just with the starter set. I
can't argue with any of that. The quality of the box sets with each new thing seems to be going up, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So I thought that the 8th edition launch box set, the Dark Imperium box set, was and is a really well presented and well put together box set. And then the new Age of Sigmar box came out and kind of knocked my socks off too, with not only just the coolness of the models, but the presentation of it. Like, it feels like they keep stepping over their own achievements every time they come out with a new box. Seeing some of the, I don't know if you were aware, Paul, but the Forge World Weekender event was on Sunday, and at that, they previewed the Adeptus Titanicus box.
Oh, yeah.
And that looks amazing. Like, all of these different box sets, it's like, and all of them in a short span of time, like the same 6-week period, and I'm just like, but my wallet, why?
As it screams.
Why are you like this?
As it screams. Yeah, man, I think I agree with that. Well, I know I agree with that wholeheartedly. And in the terrain, and this is going to be a chase item, people are going to be looking to use that stuff. It's modular, it fits in. You can build it in all different type of configurations, and it's going to be perfect for this game, and of course 40k. And anything you need line of sight blocking stuff with. The stuff is awesome. The barrier to entry for this game is incredibly low, because if you like a faction, there's pretty much a way to use it in this game. Mm-hmm. And the games are going to go pretty quick. I mean, there is that model limit of 20 models. Now, I'm sure that we will see 20 model armies, and I'm sure we'll see some, I mean, I haven't really put a 3 model army together yet, or should kill team together yet, but maybe it's possible with this or some the upcoming. We know they're going to be releasing some box sets that are like famous kill teams, known kill teams.
Yeah, I'm very interested in those little sets, because they come with like these specialized cards and model makeups, but they also come with like little bits of terrain and stuff. So like if you're starting out with the kill team box set, right, and you're trying to collect every kill team that comes out, like by the time you get through 3 or 4 of them, you're actually going to have a pretty decent sized amount of terrain. And their game board, of course, their official game board size is smaller than a 6x4 40k game, but you keep it up, all of a sudden you're looking pretty good in the terrain department. We all know how important that is to the game right now.
That's very true. It's incredibly important. Yeah, but it's going to be the same here. Like, I think this is going to be one of those things to where I put together several kill teams, just for, whatever, a modeling opportunity, and using some bits I've had laying around forever.
Yeah, anything to add a little bit of character, right?
Yeah. And, and realistically, I'm not sure how many of those will turn into full-fledged armies, but I'm not really worried about that. Like, I think I just want to roll dice and have a good time with this game specifically.
Sure.
So I think that's going to be our intro coverage to Kill Team, and we'll talk more about Kill Team. I think we'll build a couple of Kill Team lists and talk about them on next week's show.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Though I'll have to listen to next week's show from a cruise, because I will be gone for a couple weeks after getting married next week. So if you don't hear from me, that's why. Because you don't miss me too much. Nah. Well, marrying a Norn queen and all that, everything worked out just fine. She's great. I'm very excited about that, but it kind of sucks at the same time. Not very much, granted, considering what's going on. It sucks to miss out on what looks to be a really exciting release.
Well, I think we're gonna keep talking about this stuff. It's gonna be fun, and people out there, if you built some kill teams, let us know about it, because I think this is going to be something that people really do appreciate. We're going to see events popping up that are just for this. If you've got models right now, you're ready to play this game.
So what do you think? Is there going to be a Wrong Way Kids Kill Team Championship showing sometime in the future, Paul?
Hey, that sounds pretty good. Speaking of good performances, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about the Wrong Way Kids at the ATC.
All right, sounds like a party.
See you in a minute.
You're listening to Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, we are back. The D10s, I know it hasn't been that long. The stuff surrounding, like I was talking about, all like the motivation, like the flavor things leading up to you building your kill team are decided by D10s also. I would not be surprised if that becomes an expanded part of the game. But right now it seems to be things surrounding the gameplay, not a core principle of the gameplay with the extra dice or the extra sides.
So you heard it here first. Terminators will be making armor saves on D10s in the future.
Maybe so. Maybe that's why we get it. So the ATC was this past weekend, and I know there's been a lot of talk about some of the things that happened, and that's well documented even on one of these shows, the previous bonus episode we just published. If you look at the internet about competitive play, you've seen some of the stuff. But I want to talk about some of the great stuff. Took the Wrong Way Kids. We actually had a few teams there. My team is the one that had the name Wrong Way Kids, and we finished 9th overall.
Now, out of how many teams?
78 teams.
That doesn't seem like it sucks, Paul.
No, it really doesn't. And we went with the way the scoring system worked this year. They messed with it just a little bit to try to I guess give some teams some, you get scoring differential and you want separation, that kind of stuff. But with the way that the scoring system worked out, we actually went undefeated. We had 3 wins and 3 draws.
Okay.
Which is hard. You had to get a very, very narrow margin difference between you and your opponent. But if it was within that margin, it was a draw. And we did 3 draws. And with the level of competition that we were facing, I'll take it. We had 3 really good wins and 3 draws. A couple of those draws, we were on the top end of it to where, a few more points, those are wins. One of those draws, we were a couple of points on the bottom end of it. So I feel really good about how the team did.
Well, how do all the players kind of, and you yourself, you were team captain, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you feel about the games that you played and your individual performance and how that affected the team?
Look, I played Ynnari, and we talked about my list before, 3 Hemlocks and a Crimson Hunter Exarch of an Aleatog detachment, and then Ynnari with Yvrain, an Autarch, which is money in the bank, man. That Autarch. I built the list originally like more of a psychic focus, and I know everyone took the Autarch, and I know I'm late to the game on that, but to me, I just couldn't, like whenever I played against it, I would just always kill that guy. Now, either because I had a stronger assault element, or I'd recognize him as an opposing threat or something. I don't know. He just didn't ever stand out to me as something that was going to make a huge impact on the game. And so in my initial run of the list, I had another Farseer instead of this Autarch in the list. Well, after a couple of test games, I'm like, man, I got this Farseer just kind of riding around in a Wave Serpent not doing anything because the other Farseer is doing all the work. And I'm like, man, I need another piece in the army that's going to do something. And the only real room I had was to replace that Farseer with an Autarch. And man, oh man, and I give a lot of credit to my main competitive playtest buddy on that. I borrowed the figure from him. He obviously knows the power and already had one. But it did so much work for me this weekend with the Banshee Mask, the fusion gun, the laser lance, the twin link shuriken catapults. I mean, he's firing with his elbows, he's firing with his face, he's got shots for days. And when he charges, he's with all the weapons, with the laser lance, he's pretty tough in combat, and he can go over and just absolutely murk mortar squads and 5-man units of Marines and that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so much that he can do, and people kind of sleep on him a little bit.
So he kind of went to the Knight Castellan school of covering yourself in guns?
Yeah. And, I mean, he's not a shield captain by any stretch. But he ain't half bad. And he's cheaper. He does more, he does equivalent level of stuff, if you ask me, to a shield captain. He's not as survivable, but he doesn't need to be. He is in close combat, and what he can do and how he can kind of threaten things on the table. It's pretty comparable.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming an element of effective lists and you see this not only just with the Autarch and the Shield Captain, but with like Captain Smash, the Blood Angels, Thunderhammer, Storm Shield Captain. There are small Smash Gwinius, as some like to say. We should do like a list off sometime, Paul, with the different names of this guy. But there is a place, it seems, for small, tough characters that can fit into narrow space. They don't take up a lot of room on the table. They can be protected pretty easily through screens or whatever, and they basically fit through the narrow gaps in your enemy's defenses, either through mobility or flexibility, and then they get rid of key units in your opponent's roster.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this guy does. He is able to move really fast and stab things just as hard as you need. And so that's why I say he's like putting a shield captain in an Eldar list.
Now, what's his points come in at?
I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but it's not
just ballpark it for me.
120 points, 150 points.
Yeah. Thunderhammer Storm Shield Capt is like 129.
Yeah, he's not expensive. And again, that's just a ballpark. I don't have it right in front of me right now, and I apologize, but he's not a super expensive character. You know, and if you're using him in a regular Eldari list, you could take the Path Command. Can't do that in the Ynnari version. So he even has more abilities if you are using him in just a fair Eldar list.
No, I like that. I like that kind of flexibility and usability.
In your Vrain, of course, she is the engine in the Corvette. She's able to cast the Word of the Phoenix, which is what the power that allows you to get an extra soul burst in the psychic phase. So, you know, you got Dark Reaper shooting twice. I don't need to tell anybody how awesome that is.
She probably fits an engine under that skirt of hers.
Yeah, she fits in a Wave Serpent, you know, so, you know, I don't know, maybe, you know, she bundles it up. I don't know. But it is slightly, it's like worse than Space Marine Rhinos when you pull out your Vrain, a Farseer, and a whole boatload of Dark Reapers out of a Wave Serpent. But one of the things that really I took my troop sections were a unit of 14 Guardians, a unit of 15 Guardians, and a couple of Scout squads. And you think, well, why don't people just boots on the ground you? Why don't they just go over there and take out all that stuff? Well, because Eldar stratagems, because the hemlocks, because the planes are very intimidating, especially when you push them up into somebody's face and you wipe out 2 or 3 units on turn 1. People start thinking, I gotta kill these planes. And so that becomes kind of like a secondary factor to the game. People kind of get rattled a bit by these really big planes, and they lose sight. They basically takes them a turn or two to mentally recover from what happened, and so they're trying to shoot the planes instead of trying to shoot the Guardians.
Well, that's a very complicated game-related PTSD you're talking about.
Yeah.
With a finite 2-turn recovery time.
Indeed. And I kept, whenever the Dark Reapers would get out of the Wave Serpent, I would move the Wave Serpent over to kind of hover near where the Rangers were, just in case I felt like I was in jeopardy of getting, boots on the ground tabled. I would throw the Rangers in a Wave Serpent.
There you go.
And I mean, this is just little things, and these are ways that you preserve. You know, you stay on the table longer, you're able to score a lot of points. The first, I'll just talk about, my games, although so the team did very, very well. We actually had a list of, we had a strategy of me and one of the other teammates were going to attempt to score lots of points. And if we scored lots of points, then it would be difficult for the other teams to win because our point ratios between us and the opponents would be so skewed. And that's probably a contributor to how we ended up with 3 draws, by the way, also.
So it's to win, you score a lot of points. Later, we'll discuss water being wet.
Well, it's about when you add up all the team score.
Right.
If you're within so you need a couple of people. You really, to win out, you need 3 people to score a ton of points.
Right. We've kind of talked about it in previous years on the show when it comes to the ATC, how you have, basically people who are there to generate a bunch of victory points, and then you have people on your team who are there to stop the other team from generating as many points.
Yeah, and we probably had one too many preservation point listers, and maybe we could have had one more, glass cannon type list. I don't know. I mean, we'll diagnose it a little bit later, but that's basically where I went into it. I played a Chaos Space Marine player with Magnus in round 1, and you know how Magnus works. Magnus has to die. Mm-hmm. And it was all his fault, Paul. Yeah, well, right. And it's kind of unfortunate that in some lists, sometimes Magnus is the only target. And if you're not playing a list that causes target confusion, i.e. like something like the Hemlocks or like Magnus and Mortarion on the same table or, whatever, you need to cause target confusion or your one target gets shot at because your opponent doesn't have to make any decisions. Mm. And the guy he had actually a pretty stout list. The only advantage that I had in that is that my turn 1 was playing for me. I basically was incapable of making a mistake because all I had to do was shoot at Magnus.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes Magnus just lives, by the way, and if Magnus lives, then it's a different game for me too.
That's Vulcan's line, Paul.
Yeah?
Yep.
Sometimes Magnus just lives?
No, Vulcan lives.
Yeah, Magnus lives.
Right.
Yep.
Gosh,
Kill me.
spell stealer.
But if Magnus had lived, of course, again, it is a different proposition. But
true, very true.
Magnus gets taken out. I'm able to then kind of just pick apart the army and score a bunch of points. It was a good round for me. We end up winning that round. We then go play a good team, and I'll list if I can remember the team names. I'll list them in the show notes. But I then get matched up against a guy playing knights. And, you know, as we covered on a couple of shows ago, knights are a little bit stronger than we give them credit for.
Sure.
Unless you're shooting them with Dark Reapers twice a turn and a bunch of Hemlocks.
Well, I think that is a pretty much universal use in all situations, apply to every problem kind of solution.
There's only so many times you can rotate the ion shields. Yeah, that's... Yeah, but it was also because, you know, in this edition we roll randomly for deployment. So in almost all situations where it would have been a tough matchup, I actually got favorable deployments. And so that's not an asterisk to the success or whatever, but it's a big player in the game. So if he had to come hammer and anvil against me, what that really does is gives me an extra turn of shooting. And that's really difficult to come back from when you've only got a few targets.
Yeah, if you don't have a way of clearing that distance quickly, I mean, that's one of the things that Wings of Fire is so good for, right, in Blood Angels list, is that you could set up all the way on the back end of your deployment zone and hammer and anvil, and then in the same turn, be 9 inches away from somebody.
Yep. The next round was the next day. There was two games on day 1. Then the next round didn't take place to day 2. I'm playing against Chaos Demons with a ton of Bloodletters and a ton of Horrors. Again, I get a favorable deployment, and I'm able to just pick them apart. He had a bunch of Demon Princes, and he had a bunch of characters that buffed out his squads. Well, in the ITC, you know, there's a secondary, what is it, the Headhunter?
Right. There's Headhunter, because I don't have all the different
Kingslayer,
names. And
it's the one to take out multiple characters.
And yeah, characters with a certain number of wounds.
Yep.
And yeah.
He's basically in a position to where he has to try to spread out, try to buff everybody, and then try to get across the table to me. And that exposed some areas where I could slip in Hemlocks and roast a few characters early, which gives me a pretty good point advantage. And then he's having to come across the table to me, and you know how that story goes.
Sure.
Extra rounds of shooting. Now, good dude. I've actually been playing against this guy for years, and I think he kind of jumped on the grenade as far as like taking one for the Eldar. This was the game against this team that we actually were on the bottom end of the draw. One of my teammates absolutely got vec'd. I'll just say that.
I hate that stratagem.
When you can use it to stop a command point reroll, it's brutal. It's brutal.
It's like, no, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's a very powerful stratagem, and this is not going to be a rant about that, but it is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And
well, in an ATC-style environment, too, where you can kind of pick who you throw that against, there are certain armies that there's a certain particular bag of tricks that they have that are very stratagem-dependent, and sometimes multiple stratagem-dependent, and if even one of those goes wrong, all of a sudden the wind is fully out of their sails, and being able to just choose that one.
Yeah, no, it's very brutal. Played against Tau next, and Tau, you guys know that like as far as like army power, I'm not a huge fan of the competitiveness of Tau, but the savior protocols on the drones can be very difficult to fight against. What the savior protocols do is essentially allow the drones that are tied to the battle suits, including Riptides and the Crisis Suit Commanders and the Urvaras and that kind of stuff, to dump wounds. So when you get a wound on a suit and they do the savior protocols, on a 2-up, they dump the wound to the drone, and the drone only takes 1 mortal wound. So you may just hit him with a 3 damage weapon, but that drone's taking 1 mortal wound, and if he feels no pain in that or anything, it stays.
Yep.
Yeah, it can be very difficult to deal with. Tempest launchers handle that situation, by the way.
Oh, you don't say.
Well, but you get where I'm going. You still have to do a lot of damage. to them to get him off the table. And it was one of those situations to where had things not gone a little bit my way in the early part of the game, he's over there doing a lot of damage to me. Like he kind of that first player, the first tile player, figured out in round 4 he should probably shoot the Dark Reapers.
Oh, at round 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean that seems okay.
But again, you push up those planes in people's face. Now the planes, they look cool, right?
Yeah. Cool. A lot of times, that was one of the reasons, and I kind of laugh at this now, but I painted one of my Storm Ravens black with red stripes. I noticed that people would shoot at that one more often than the red ones because it had that visual threat of being a big thing associated with Death Company. And there's a lot. You could say that Death Company have made a collective scar on the conscience of an entire community with the subliminal "kill that."
Yeah, you aren't lying. But so there's that kind of mental shock that they've got to force themselves to get past. So after the Hemlocks roll over there and burn down one Riptide, they're thinking, I'm going to lose my whole army to this. And yeah, you might, but I could also lose my whole army if you make a little bit of a different target priority. So keep that in mind when you're fighting things like that. So played Tau, ended up getting a pretty decisive victory on that. Then I get to play a Guard Blood Angel Custodes list.
Yep, that is the chicken noodle of Imperial soups.
It was a tough matchup. This guy, he came to the table with, I think, 22 command points. And then with his 2 command point generators, from the relics that we talked about that helped the Knights go infinite, the Verite Veritas, and
Veritas Vitae,
and the Karaz Aquila.
Yep.
This guy is popping command points left and right. I think over the course of that game, he spent over 30 command points. And when all was said and done, I got him by a point.
Man.
Now it was a very hard fought game. I think we ended that game. It was scored 23-24 in my favor. He's got Banginius, and he redeploys Banginius, and he runs over there and beats down one Hemlock. I'm like, whew, yep, that's what that guy does.
Yep, that's what he's there for. That's exactly what I bring him to do.
Yep, he puts a shield captain over there and stabs down a Crimson Hunter Exarch.
He plays Frisbee with Flyers, and he plays Polo with Baneblades and Stormhammers.
Then he starts combining all his troop squads. He starts combining all the platoon squads to make these giant. But one of the ways that army works really well is that you make a giant squad, and then you buff that one squad to do great things. It's like all the first rank fire, second rank fire. He is just causing all kind of grief to me. But this is where that Autarch really starts to pay off. I start to kind of divide his forces a little bit. I don't even have my Dark Reapers on the table until round 3. Because there was nothing real for them to shoot. They would just get potentially whittled down with mortar fire or lasgun fire or whatever. I couldn't get to his characters until I kind of baited him into having to rush forward and separate his characters out of the buff zone and essentially out there in the open. And when he gets Banginius and his primary shield captain out there, yeah, granted, they had just killed a unit of Guardians. And then I dump those Reapers out and go to work.
Yep. I mean, sometimes you have to do that. And I'm sure you would not have missed 2 extra rounds of shooting with those guys, but not at the cost of not being able to turn over on removing the biggest problem spots in your opponent's army. If
Banginius is able to utilize some cover and charge those Dark Reapers where I can't shoot at him, then I've lost the game automatically. So with me showing a little bit of reserve, I guess, I'm able to precisely deliver that overhand right.
I'm a little proud of you for that pun, Paul Murphy. Just a little bit.
Yeah, without compromising, I tried to keep the eye on winning the game, and it was touch and go. I mean, there was, for a good part of the game, he's up by a couple of points. I had to fight and claw and scrape my way back into that, and ended up getting the point over him. Now, my team gave me no end of crap because I was only up by 1 point. But I still take it. The guy was a really nice guy. I was actually part of he's actually part of the Brohammer crew. They're out of Florida. We got to play a couple of those teams. And in the last round, I play against a Tau player also. He had one of the giant Forge World planes. What's the big one?
Are you talking about the Barracuda?
Yeah, I think it could be the Barracuda. It's not the mega giant one.
It's not the Manta.
But it has 2 big guns on the front, 2 burst cannons.
I'm going to go with Barracuda, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will revoke my library card.
Yeah, Barracuda sounds right, but the same thing had to get past all those drones, and he's a really good player. I mean, talking about like really, really tactically good player, and made lots of great decisions. Did not make the game easy. I think really what it came down to is my Guardian placement. My Guardian placement kept him from being able to get close enough to Yvraine and my Farseer, so he couldn't shut them down with his fast-moving stuff. And then you start using psychic powers and stratagems and stuff to keep the Guardians alive. It was basically like, I need to hold on. If I could just hold on with my Guardians, then I'm gonna really make it to where this guy is not gonna, I'm gonna take a lot of his power stuff out. And
I love how we keep going back to the Guardians. How many times did we not see Guardians in 7th edition?
Yeah, and you don't even see a ton of them, I don't think, in 8th, but it's just so good because...
that's contrary to my experience. I don't know how it is over there, but I mean, when I've played against Eldar players here, I mean, people seem to have big Guardian screens, sometimes with a weapons platform or something like that, and it always gets in the way. It's always a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I mean, well, because you can buff them, and you can cast, like, for instance, Doom on a squad, and then shuriken catapults immediately become, really a problem.
Doom on you.
Yeah.
Doom on.
And then, I took the damage psychic power with Yvraine, but she also has a power that lets a unit reroll 1s. So you've got like a guide and a half that you can cast in the psychic phase.
Guide and a half.
Yeah. I mean, because you're going to cast Guide with a Farseer.
Right. Yeah.
Then you cast the reroll 1s, and you're buffing up these units that they're not a ton of points in their bodies. I mean, that's really what it is. It was the physics of having basically 30 extra bodies on the table to really keep the squishy stuff.
It goes back to kind of what we talked about last week, and what we've been saying for a while. Having bodies matters so much in 40k right now.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so that was essentially the matchups that I had. Really, I mean, playing against the benefit. We always say that almost every one of these tournaments are just good folks and they're fun to play against. So that was my entire experience of everyone that I played was there to have a good time. I mean, try to win. I mean, again, I told you what our record is. We were trying to win. We ended up with the way the point spread worked out in 9th overall. Very respectable. I'm proud of that finish. I finished personally 7th overall out of the 350 players or whatever.
That's nothing to hate.
Yeah, and best Ynnari. Yeah.
Already?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. It was really nice to focus on the competition. My teammates were like, I hope nobody starts streaming around here or we're losing Paul.
I believe I made that joke last week as well. Oh, if you'll know Paul's doing poorly if you see him on a stream next week.
But it was nice to kind of to just completely focus on the competition side, be there as part of a team, and then do well as a team.
Of course.
Yeah, good showing for the Runaway Kids. Best sports at Adepticon. Last year in the team tournament, 4th overall. This year, 10th overall. 9th overall in the ATC. Which is great. That's ITC events, putting up some points for the club on the ITC. I
think that one of the cool things that come out of this conversation and about the Runaway Kids in general has to do with surrounding yourself with good people to roll dice with, and people who are as active and involved in the hobby as you are, and people who are as invested. There's having a solid gaming group of people pushing you to do better and helping you out, and people you can talk to about the hobby at any time. Like that sort of stuff really makes up a good portion of enjoyment out of this game. And coming out of a win like this, I would still call. I wouldn't call it like an overall win, but your experience sounds like a win to me.
Yeah.
And being able to share that with people and always take that with you and getting a ribbing about, oh, you only beat him by 1 point, huh? All of that comes from having good people and friends in the hobby. And if you choose those people well, you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, and I know that there's been a lot of light on the other side of it, but every other team we played at the ATC seemed to be in a similar situation that we were. Just there with some friends. I mean, again, focused and competitive. You can always tell the guys showing up in their team jerseys and everything. They're there. They're ready to rock.
Yeah,
but to still play a competitive and sporting game, that is almost everyone you're going to encounter in this. And there was, a really good air about most of the tournament. And so I feel like this was a good talk to have. And I'm sharing my actual experience of this thing, with no flower or embellishment at all. We played against good folks and had a great time. I think my only critique of the event itself is that because of the schedule and because of the additional time that they put in for people to have pairings and want the game to get, because it's difficult to hang out a lot after the event or after the games are done for the day. That's it.
The round times were a little longer too, right? Longer than
about 3 hours and 15 minutes each, and that adds up. I mean, that's like an additional hour during the day. Now, don't get me wrong,
there's a ton of games to play that weekend too.
I love it while it's happening. It's just after the fact, it's you got.
I want to hang out, but I also need to sleep.
Yeah, you got to be there again the next morning, prepared to roll dice and win for your team.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I'll absolutely be back next year. I don't know what we're playing next year or whatever. That's like a lifetime away. In 40k years, is what it seems.
Yeah, I wonder how many new codexes we'll have out by then, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, or supplements or campaigns or whatever. They had Shadespire event, they had an Age of Sigmar event, and they had vendors there this year. There was nothing to do with the event, but there was a policeman's barbecue that they set up in the parking lot in one of the other areas. It's not in a pavilion area right near where the main event hall is. I would bet almost my last dollar that the policemen will pick that weekend for their barbecue. Benefit barbecue again. Most of the tournament went over there to get barbecue, and I said if I had to bet my last dollar, that was probably the best barbecue the policemen had ever had, and they will be picking that weekend next year.
Oh, I'm sure they will. That was one of the best things about I think it was about 2 years ago almost when we had Gladiator Games. It was our first GT year for that, and we had food trucks. And that was a very good day for the food truck.
Yeah, man, I bet. Guys, so, again, overall, very happy with the team. And, I'll probably over the next, we'll see about maybe get some other teammates on to talk about their experiences too. Ricky was on the team. Ricky is in the field right now, so he can't join us, but him talking about some of his games, I think people will enjoy. He was one of our point denial list. And did really well over the weekend too. I mean, definitely.
Well, I look forward to hearing about all that.
Yeah, everyone performed what we thought they were supposed to be doing as their team element. And again, I consider that a successful year.
Sure. Yeah, always looking for more for the next year, right?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So I'm going to put the Hemlocks back on the shelf.
Putting your crutch away.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to play next. I think I may focus on Death Guard for a little bit.
Hey, well, when you got a little bit of everything, Paul, you have that luxury.
Well, these are armies that are fun to play. For me,
can I just challenge you to use Plague Marines?
Whew, that's asking a bit much. But no, realistically, that was actually what I was thinking about trying to do, was mess around with some of those new Plague Marine kits and maybe use the kill team as an excuse to really mess around with some of the cool new Plague Marine kits. Because all my Plague Marines outside of the character models that I just recently got are the 3rd edition models.
Yeah, I mean they're almost totally different nowadays.
And nowhere near the scale. Like it's ridiculous putting them next to because the Plague Marines are essentially the size of Primaris models. And the 3rd edition Plague Marines, Chaos Space Marines, are nowhere near that size.
Yeah, I wish that the scale of the old Plague Marines matched the current times, just because I enjoy their aesthetic seemed more menacing than goofy. That's kind of my biggest criticism of Death Guard's aesthetic nowadays, is where there were these kind of relentless sort of terrifying, quiet warriors. Now it just kind of feels like, you just feed their stomach a grenade and,
I do think there are a few too many tummy mouths.
Yeah, it's just, so it's like, it's a little bit much for me. It's gone a little bit too far. For my tastes, though, I would never go so far as to say that, that's not 40K, because really, 40K is all about pushing that sort of boundary.
Oh, yeah,
especially
absolutely.
Statistically.
I'm just saying that I'm going to use this as an excuse to mess around with some of the new Plague Marines, and I think Kill Team is an absolute good excuse for that for myself, and I'm willing to bet that other people will also feel that way, especially when you can get a different play feel. Like, this is very much familiar. It looks very much like the 40K like style and everything, but it's going to have a very much different feel, a different texture to it. And so I think people may appreciate the fact they're going to get more value and a different experience out of their models. Whereas, the skirmish games before were either just a trimmed down version or, some kind of truncated version. This is going to be a whole different game.
Sure.
Maybe I'll find that mythical 3 model kill team list out of somewhere.
The unbeatable 3 model kill team.
Man, well, that's all I wanted to cover tonight. We're going to have tournament news. We're going to be announcing some tournaments that people want to get out there and get people to attend on the next show. Going to be talking about lots of fun stuff rounding out this summer.
That sounds like a good time, and I'll be back in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Enjoy it. Congratulations. Please give my best to your soon-to-be new missus.
Will do. Yeah. No, it's very exciting. Our cake toppers are actually Warhammer miniatures.
And I know that you and I will talk, but if for everyone else, let me wish you a good congratulations on behalf of everyone else that may be listening.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.
All right, man. We'll see you.
All right. Take care, Paul.
It's all in the reflexes.